So why are people upset about the Dawntrail storyline? Well, it starts at FanFest, where we learn that Bon Ryota is going to be working on the story. This started a really big debate because apparently a lot of people didn't like the Sorrows of Warlit storyline, which if you don't remember was the side trial series side story in Shadowbringers. I was kind of surprised by this because I kind of enjoyed it myself. When I read into it, I found out that a lot of people A, didn't like how dark it was, and B, didn't like how it was a redemption arc for Gaius. Or at least, that's what they felt it was, because I don't personally agree with that. As far as the darkness is concerned, I get it. That's not going to be for everyone, and that's okay. But the redemption arc, I don't think that really makes sense to me. Especially not when you stack it up to the stuff that happened with Gaius in the main story, right? Like, we had Gaius going on missions with the Stinian, we had Gaius taking out other Ascians. Like, I think if anything is going to lean into redeeming Gaius, that stuff does a lot more for that than the side stories do. And as far as the side story itself, it was more so to show him paying for what he's done and what he's caused within Garlemald. He suffers a lot in that storyline. I don't think it's meant to redeem him, I think it's meant to humanize him. It's meant to show him the reality of what he's caused throughout the world. At the end, I don't know, I can't see him being redeemed there, even if there is like a silver lining of positivity after all the stuff that happens. And you gotta think about it too, like let's go back to 2.0, right? Such devastation was not my intention. Gaius is a villain. Lines like that are meant to humanize their villains, right? They're meant to say, oh, this villain actually didn't want to do all of this stuff. It's not just about causing as much destruction as possible. And that's not new to Final Fantasy XIV, right? Look at Emmett Selk. People love Emmett Selk. Like I don't have to say that. Like, you know this. Emmett Selk is a character who has done heinous crimes. Like, he has done a lot of bad stuff, but people still love the character. And that's because Square did a pretty good job at humanizing Emmett Selk. We understand what happened to him, why he feels that way, and that he regrets it. At least his past self does not like hearing about that. We have this really complicated villain that has done a lot of bad, and people like the character. Why is Gaius different? What is different about Gaius? I think we should recognize that Square loves to humanize their villains and give us a chance to dive into what they're thinking and feeling, and I think that was the point of the Sorrows of Warlit storyline. Besides it being like, just a great mecha anime reference too, which that stuff was cool. In any case, aside from Bon Ryota working on the storyline, we also learned that Dawntrail is split into two storylines, and people are kind of worried because it reminds them of Stormblood, which that's a whole other issue, and while I understand it, I have some things to say about that, but I'll get into that a little bit later. I want to leave it back to Bon Ryota because people are worried that Ishikawa Natsuko is taking a back seat, and she's not the lead scenario writer for the expansion. As it turns out, Bon Ryota isn't either. We actually have two lead scenario writers, and as far as I'm aware, neither of them have been named yet. We just know that they're working on it. So a lot of people are upset over nothing. Despite that, I still want to get into why this is kind of problematic for the community and how we can maybe just be a little bit better about this stuff, because it's fair to criticize the game and be upset with the storyline, but the way we handle that is the problem. Quick aside, but I just wanted to say, thanks for being here if you made it this far. If you like what I'm doing here, I'd really appreciate a subscription, and don't forget to turn the bell on so that you can actually see when my videos are coming out. But I don't want to waste too much of your time, so let's get right back to it. Let's dive into the deeper issue here. I think that as a community, we have an issue of being too obsessed with the people who work on Final Fantasy XIV. Trust me when I say I get it, right? I get why this happens. We love Yoshi P, we love Soken, we love Ishikawa Natsuko. We love a lot of people who are involved in this game because they have created something important to us. And Square Enix does a really good job with things like live letters and FanFest of putting these people on stage. It's really cool, and a lot of games don't do this. We get to know who is involved in the things that we like and who's making them. And that's good. I think that across the games industry as a whole, developers deserve more praise. I have no problems with this. I think it's great to give people the credit that they deserve. That being said, when it gets taken to an extreme as far as how the community reacts to it, that's where the problems start. Because now we have situations like the present one where everyone loves Natsuko Ishikawa because of Shadowbringers and Endwalker. Even though Bon Ryota worked on Endwalker, we love her because of that. We give her most of all the credit for those stories being great, that the moment she steps back and lets someone else try writing for the game as a scenario writer, we get upset. People love her so much that they aren't willing to give other writers a chance, and I think that's a horrible thing. We have no idea what they're going to do. Dawntrail could be amazing, but if you're going in saying, oh, it's going to suck because Natsuko Ishikawa isn't working on it, you're setting yourself up to not like the story before you even experience it, and you're probably just going to go in looking to pick it apart instead of allowing yourself to be immersed in the storyline and just enjoy it for what it is. Why do that to yourself? I think it's good to praise and give credit, but we need to be careful about putting these developers on a pedestal, because we have to talk about what goes wrong when we don't like something. Suddenly we find out that Bon Ryota is working on the expansion in because people don't like the Sorrows of Warlight storyline, everything else he does is apparently going to be bad, which I think is really silly. Not to mention the other really dangerous part about how publicized a lot of the staff members are is that when something that they do is disliked, everyone is talking about it. So imagine being Bon Ryota or any other member of the staff, and you go online and you see all these people hating on you for no reason. Like, it's one thing to not like the story, and it's okay to say that, but to act like the entire story and everything else you ever work on is ruined that's just not cool, you know? I think that's really, really hateful and just not a healthy relationship to have between the community and the developers of the game. And so I want to talk about how we can kind of fix this. And first off, we have to realize games are a team effort. It's not just one person working on things. Bon Ryota has been involved in so much of the game, including the Eden storyline. Many people work on these things. It's usually not just one person. It's not like one person's writing something and it just goes into the game. It gets reviewed, people give feedback, and then it makes it in. You know, it gets revised and edits happen, and then it finally reaches the players after all the development's done. Just as much as you want to give credit to a writer, there are a lot of people that make the magic happen in these stories that we love. And likewise, there are a lot of people involved in making the stories that we might not like as much too. The point is, both the successes and the failures are a shared responsibility for the team. When we focus so hard on just one person, we give them all the credit and all the hate at the same time. And I just don't think that this is a really healthy way to act. I mean, come on, let's think about other media. Like, look at One Piece, for example. There are plenty of chapters of One Piece that people have mixed opinions on, but it doesn't mean that they stop reading One Piece as a whole or watching the anime. In other forms of media, we often are willing to say, oh, this was a bad chapter, this was a bad episode of this show, but I still like it overall. We don't say that, oh, this episode was bad, I'm never watching anything again from this person. You know, that's usually not how it works. You know, sometimes it does, I'll be honest, but usually that's not what happens. So why are we looking at someone who's done so much in the game and saying that, oh, this one side quest storyline was not something that I liked, so Dawntrail will clearly suck? What sense does that make? I really just want people to give Dawntrail a chance. The two storylines thing I think is important because I understand why people would compare it to Stormblood, but I think the big difference here is that it's not in the middle of a grander storyline. You know, Stormblood had a lot of stuff going on before the expansion and a lot to build up to after. There's a difference here. We don't have anything going on. There's not much going on right now. The whole point of Dawntrail is to set up the next story arc. So we have the expansion, which will stand alone by itself, but it's like, you know, this big vacation celebration while also leading into whatever comes in the next expansion and the one after that, and maybe a couple more after that even. So I don't think that we should treat them the same. And I think that we should trust them to also remember a lot of the criticism that Stormblood did have, because I'm sure they're aware of it just as much as we are. We have to remember that the developers do listen to the community. You know, they don't always respond to everything that we say. They're seeing a lot of it in all regions, not just one. I also want you to consider the expectation you're setting for newer players. You know, I don't want new players to come to the game and see that like, oh, this person didn't work on this, so it must be like a bad expansion. You know, I think that's really not a great mindset, because the reality of Final Fantasy XIV is that a lot of the stories are loved in different ways by different people. You know, not everyone likes every expansion. I'm sure a lot of people have their favorite expansions, Endwalker or Shadowbringers, but some people really like Heavensward. Some people really like Stormblood. I'm sure some people have A Realm Reborn as their favorite expansion, and that's okay. People are just going to like different things for different reasons, and it'll resonate for reasons that might not resonate with you. This is kind of a modern discourse thing in general, but just because you don't like a storyline doesn't mean that everyone else also hates it too. Despite what you might have thought if you read Twitter the past, I don't know, week or two, a lot of people really do like the Sorrows of Warlight storyline. And also, a lot of people love Stormblood. I mean, hey, this happened with Boja, right? People were hating on Boja a lot in Shadowbringers, but Endwalker came around and people really started to miss it. So many people actually wanted something like Boja. The thing you have to always remember is that people who like something usually aren't online talking about how they like it, they're just enjoying it. And the people who hate it are the ones who are more likely to complain. So it's really easy to feel like all the negative attention is the majority of people, when it isn't always the case. And besides, it's kind of weird that Sorrows of Warlight was so dark and people didn't like that when a lot of Shadowbringers was really dark, and there was a lot of tragedy in that expansion as a whole. Anyway, I really appreciate you being here. If you made it this far, let me know in the comments what you thought. I'm sure that some of you will disagree with what I said, and that's totally okay. That's ultimately what I'm here for, to talk about the game. In any case, I'll see y'all in the next video.